We got a lot of things happening in Washington this morning. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer making the announcement last night, and that a vote should come this morning.
We are ready to move forward. We have an agreement on the CR, the continuing resolution to prevent a government shutdown, and we should be voting on that tomorrow morning.
So in addition to keeping the government running, the continuing resolution includes funding for the widespread damage caused by when hurricane and funds for resettling Afghan refugees. But as part of Congress appears to be working out its kinks, President Biden's economic agenda is still up in the air. He attended the congressional baseball game yesterday as his party feuds over the bipartisan infrastructure bill vote. Moderate Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, they're still not budging, refusing to support the larger $3.5 trillion Democratic-only reconciliation bill. This is, of course, creating sharp divisions in the Democratic Party, potentially jeopardizing President Biden's economic agenda. Let's get into it. Joining us now to make sense of the government funding deal and the rift to the Democrats is NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, great to see you this morning. Wow, it's going to be quite a 24 hours. All eyes, of course, on the votes that are going to be happening in Washington today. Let's start, though, with the good news here, right? How did you get a 50-50 Senate to reach a deal to keep the government open?
Slowly and not without partisan back and forth, because that's what we saw over the course of this week. Democrats trying a few different ways to both raise or suspend the debt ceiling and also fund the government. The way that they got to this agreement, though, was by tackling one at a time. Republicans had long said that they didn't want to play ball on suspending the debt ceiling. They want Democrats to do that on their own. That's a battle that we get to have now over the course of the next 2.5 weeks while they figure out how to do that. On government funding, though, you laid out the basics of this. The Senate coming to a deal overnight that would fund the government until December 3rd. So if this storyline was interesting to you, we may get to do it again in a few weeks. In addition to that, money for Afghan refugees as well as for disaster relief. We expect to see this morning the Senate go through a few rounds of amendments and then vote on this bill. That should mean that the House gets it at some point this afternoon. They are expected to pass it, and that would mean that just a few hours before that midnight deadline tonight, the government shutdown would be averted.
Let's talk reconciliation here, right? We're seeing a major divide in Washington right now amongst the Democratic Party between basically progressives and moderates in the Democrat. Hearing from Joe Manchin yesterday, late last night, we should say, in a statement. And I want to read part of that statement for you, Ali. Spending trillions more on new and expanded government programs when we can't even pay for the essential social programs like Social Security and Medicare is the definition of fiscal insanity. Some strong words there from Senator Joe Manchin, as all eyes on him, of course, and his colleague, Senator Kyrsten Sinema. Are Democratic progressives, are Democrat progressives willing to hold the line here? How far are they willing to go?
They're willing to go as far as it needs to go, which is to say, it seems like they're open to helping this bill fail if it comes to the floor later today. And you don't need to take my word or my reporting on that. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal's not mincing words about it yesterday. Listen.
I mean, I don't know what to say. He needs to either give us an offer or this whole thing is not going to happen. Yes, actually, if anything, it makes me more confident. And I can tell you that his statement has just probably created at least a bunch more votes on the House floor against a bipartisan bill.
And Jayapal, who's the head of the Progressive Caucus in the House, she wasn't lacking those dozens of progressive votes anyway. Her negotiating position has always been that these two bills are linked. Now it's just an open question of whether or not this bill actually comes to the floor to a vote today in the House. Speaker Pelosi has consistently been clear she does not want to bring a vote that will fail. All of the leadership folks that we're talking to, it's an hour-by-hour assessment here on Capitol Hill. I would also note, though, if this bill doesn't come to a floor, if we go through several news cycles where this fails and the Democratic and Biden agenda are jeopardized, it's not forever. Unlike these other deadlines that we've been talking about this week on the economic side of this is something that Democrats can come back to. It's entirely possible that this fails and we don't revisit it, but it's also entirely possible that with the passage of time, they can cobble together a deal that will work and push this forward.
Yeah, AOC echoing that sentiment on Rachel Maddow last night in her interview as well. Ali Vitale, my friend, great reporting on this as always. Thank you.
Now to a message from the CDC for pregnant people. Get vaccinated. The agency has issued its strongest guidance to date, urging those who are pregnant to get the COVID vaccine. So far, there's been more than 250,000 COVID cases among pregnant women and 161 deaths. There were 22 deaths in August alone. Yet less than a third of pregnant people are vaccinated against COVID-19. Here's Dr. Anthony Fauci echoing this concern.
The impact of the COVID-19 disease on pregnancy can be profound in a negative way. On the woman who's pregnant herself is at high risk for a severe outcome for COVID for her. The negative impact on the fetus is also very clear right now.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us to help break down this guidance. Dr. Patel, always great to have you, and especially on this one. This is such an important topic, and I think so important to keep in mind how emotional this is for pregnant people. They're wanting to protect their baby. That's where this is coming from. And I think that some of this confusing and differing, changing guidance has led us to this point. So first, just tell us what's behind this warning from the CDC. What puts pregnant women at risk of getting severe COVID?
Yeah, so Savannah, simply put, pregnant women, and now we've seen over 18 months of data, pregnant women are at such a high risk, 70% increased risk of death if they become infected with COVID. So this is not anything trivial. And then on top of that, already, as you mentioned, even somebody who has a pregnant woman who has a mild kind of or moderate case of COVID, those can lead to ICU hospitalizations. It can obviously lead to the exact harm to the baby that, as you point out, that most pregnant mothers are trying to protect when they think twice about getting a vaccine. I think the urgent message is basically to say, listen, there were preventable deaths. 97% of the deaths that we've seen so far in pregnant women were in unvaccinated pregnant women. And that statistic alone should cause every pregnant woman who's been on the fence to revisit this and have a conversation with their doctor.
So, Dr. Patel, I mentioned before, it's only a third of pregnant women who are vaccinated. And I guess a question to you is, do you think their concern is coming from this place of being about their baby? Is this a misinformation thing? Because obviously they're thinking about the risk potentially to their unborn child. So what do you want them to know about what this can do for their child? And then also tell us anything that they should watch out for, like side effects after they get that shot, like the rest of us have been potentially experiencing.
Yeah, great questions. Look, I think it's incredibly natural. I know that when I was pregnant, I was actually, even though I knew as a doctor in my head that I can take an antacid, I can take a pain relief pill, and it's totally safe. But that pregnancy and that concern out of not wanting to do anything to harm your baby makes you think twice about everything. So I think it's totally natural that we think twice and want to ask a lot of questions in pregnancy about vaccines. But here's what you need to know. We now know that all three of the vaccines, both mRNA, Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson, that we have used all three of them in pregnant women. We know, to your point, that women do experience the same side effects that we all do, soreness of the arm, et cetera, but those side effects go away in 36 to 48 hours. And that's what they should know. There can be some changes to other parts of your body, but nothing to pregnancy. You can have some hormonal changes that affect cramp, but nothing that affects the baby. So again, best time to get a pregnancy vaccine, anytime in your pregnancy, but certainly something to know, Savannah, you can also pass on those precious antibodies through the placenta to the newborn, can protect your newborn as well.
Yeah, Dr. Patel, quickly, I just did want to ask you more about that. So the immunity does pass on to the baby here if the mother gets vaccinated before they're born?
It does, and especially why some pregnancies, you can actually talk to your OB about getting it later in the pregnancy. But again, any time in the pregnancy is the right time to get a COVID-19 shot. But yes, it can pass to your newborn and protect your newborn instantly, which is incredible.
Dr. Patel, always great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, turning now to an issue that is threatening to derail in-person learning. A nationwide teacher shortage has some schools at a tipping point. One district in Virginia is down 40 teachers so far this school year. They've launched an aggressive plan to hire more educators to fill some of those openings. NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton is joining us now outside of Fauquier High School in Virginia. Antonia, good to see you this morning. Give us a sense first of what's happening on the ground there and why the superintendent there believes this is an issue that is not going to get fixed anytime soon.
Well, look, the trends around this have been in motion for a while now, years in some communities. And what we're seeing happen in communities like this one here at Fauquier High School is, that COVID has accelerated everything. COVID and then the political situation that many of these teachers find themselves in. It's been an incredibly challenging year and a half, 2 years, where teachers have had to deal with hybrid remote learning, where they have had students come back into the classroom with serious emotional, social challenges and changes to their well-being. And so teachers are not only trying to catch students up and worry about academics, but they're increasingly, in many communities, acting like social workers, taking on immense workloads. And so in the community here, what they're seeing is that they're down by 40 teachers. So on top of all of the challenges that COVID has brought, teachers are stepping up and doing work that other teachers should be doing, who just simply aren't present. And that means that for some teachers, they don't have gap periods in the day where they're able to do additional work, and all of this is creating a crisis. Take a listen to David Jeck, the superintendent here at these schools.
There are fewer and fewer teachers, new teachers coming to job fairs. Our HR department attends more than 40 different job fairs, both virtually and in person. And the folks just aren't there. There aren't nearly as many people entering the profession. And I think part of the reason why they're not entering the profession is they look at what's happening to teachers generally, and particularly during COVID, and how they're being treated in some instances, and it's just not that appealing to them. And it is a huge problem. It's not going to suddenly get better.
Teachers are feeling really beaten up on after this challenging year, where not only have there been these health and safety issues, but parents have been at school board meetings. There have been disagreements over everything from masks to how to teach certain subjects in school. And so educators are now raising the alarms that as these pressures don't go away, the profession is going to change in alarming ways.
Hearing from the superintendent there, we also heard from him in a different medium, and that was a really powerful op-ed kind of laying out the problems even more so that persists there in that community. What are they going to do to fix things? How are they trying to recruit even more educators, more teachers?
Well, what they are doing right now is putting a heavy investment on that recruitment side. They are sending their HR representatives out to dozens of recruitment fairs, both virtual and in person, and really taking an aggressive approach to trying to get new teachers, and not just teachers in the classroom. This extends to other folks. The schools right now need nurses. They need people to work with special ed students. They need all types of employees who have been under these pressures right now. And so they're putting an immense investment into recruitment. But I want you to take a listen to one of the teachers here in the district. His name is Matthew Schell, to get a sense of what this has been like for teachers like him.
My dad was like, hey, it's kind of crazy right now. Are you sure you want to keep going? And I was like, yeah, I mean, because teaching is always about just trying to be flexible. So that's growing, like at least being a teacher while COVID was going on, that was like the first thing we learned was always be flexible. So I was kind of more prepared for that than I guess some teachers that have been in the field for a while have been. And yeah, I even had some second thoughts. I thought about maybe just taking a year off, waiting to see, get my degree just to keep working. But in the end, I just kept going through with it. I just needed to get out there.
So many teachers are describing what you just heard from him, that they've had second thoughts, that they've considered taking breaks. And, to put this all in context just here in this community, they say that they normally are getting about 1,000 applications for teacher positions, but now they're looking at only about 400. So that's less than half of the kind of applicants and kind of interest in these roles. And many of those applicants, they say, don't have the proper educational background. They don't have the proper preparation to actually be in the classroom. So this crisis is not set to end anytime soon.
And that's going to affect students for years to come, on top of what they've already experienced with this pandemic. Antonia Hilton for us.
That's right.
Thank you, Antonia.
Britney Spears' father, Jamie, has been suspended as her conservator after controlling her life for 13 years. Yesterday, a judge handed the role to a man handpicked by the singer's legal team.
And now the pop star is moving to terminate her conservatorship for good. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda has more from outside the Los Angeles courthouse.
Decision day for Britney Spears, the judge freeing the pop star's finances of her father's control.
Feels like winning.
a long-awaited win for the Free Britney movement, organized by fans online, which helps spotlight her 13-year conservatorship.
The conservatorship has got to go!
It's been 13 long years of fighting for this girl's life, and finally today, he's gone. For the first time in 13 years, we have hope. Finally.
The judge removed her father, Jamie Spears, as conservator, handing the reins to accountant John Zabel at the request of Britney's legal team.
We hope the best for your daughter, sir.
The development falls on the heels of an explosive New York Times documentary detailing allegations that Jamie and some members of his team monitor Britney's every move, even mirroring her phone and recording audio of her bedroom.
Her intimate relations were closely managed.
How you doing, Brittany?
You know, Britney could not have someone in the privacy of her house without those three people knowing.
In court filings, Britney's attorney calling her father's alleged actions an unconscionable and disgraceful violation of her privacy rights. The security company enlisted by the star's father telling the New York Times they are particularly proud of keeping Ms. Spears safe for so many years. An attorney for Jamie Spears insisted he operated within the parameters set by the court. The ruling could reveal if he did in fact follow the rules. Britney's attorney explained a new conservator could have access to Jamie's communications in the case, suggesting in a filing that's why Jamie instead hoped the conservatorship would be terminated entirely. The long legal journey spans more than a decade, Britney publicly condemning the conservatorship for the first time this summer, calling it abusive and traumatizing. Her testimony touching people from London to Los Angeles in the growing Free Britney movement.
I feel like everything has culminated to this point. All of the court proceedings, all the protesting, all of the posts online, everything came to a point today, and we got what we wanted. Britney got what she wanted.
Ikeda reporting. Thank you so much. Emily.
Let's now bring in NBC News legal contributor and former federal prosecutor Cynthia Oxney to help us understand more on this. Cynthia, good morning. So as we've heard, an accountant has been named the temporary conservator of Britney's finances. So let's just walk through this. As her team works through this here to terminate the conservatorship for good, what does this mean Britney's team needs to do now in order for that to happen? Do you see it being a difficult process for them? Is that still what we can expect would eventually happen here?
Well, I think there's two things. One, I don't think it's a difficult process at this point to get her conservatorship closed down. I don't think that's the difficult process. The difficult process is going through the documentation of what her father's been doing for the last 13 years. And clearly her new lawyer, who's a former federal prosecutor, is going on offense. He is going to see exactly where all that money disappeared from, and how much money was spent. How many commissions did he get? Was there self-dealing? Who was making, how much money did he make? And he was very clear in the hearing that he is going after the father, not only for all this money, but also for the invasion of her privacy, which is really not only creepy, but probably illegal. She's got herself a bull terrier, and he's not fooling around.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you more about what you just mentioned, it probably being illegal in just a second. But first, so I have a question on this suspension. So Jamie Spears has only been suspended from her conservatorship, not terminated. What's the difference here? And actually, I think I understand that it was Britney's team who asked the judge to wait to terminate him altogether. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. There were two options here. One was to completely shut it down, and the other was just to move it, kick the ball down the road until the hearing on November 12th. The advantage of that is all of the documentation is secured and continued and moves to all the temporary people that have been assigned. What the father was hoping was he could shut the whole thing down and then never have to share the books and the information with anybody. So this was a way that her lawyers asked. This is what she wanted, was to push it off till November 12th so there can be an evaluation of what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, quickly, just tell me, as you just mentioned, probably illegal. Some of this behavior that we've heard from her father sounds quite disturbing from what we've heard from Britney when she did actually testify, and then also this potential bugging of her room, tapping of her phones. Could she sue him once these hearings are over?
she can not only sue him, he could be criminally prosecuted. It just depends on what exactly happened. California has very serious invasion of privacy laws, much stronger than most states, I would say. And they're on the forefront of that. And they're what's called a two-party consent state. So if you have a telephone call, both parties have to consent to it. In many states, only one party has to consent. But in California, both parties have to consent. And that theme kind of continues also with all the other invasion of privacy investigations. So they were bugging her phone, which they may or may not have had consent through the court for. They were apparently, according to the allegations now, which we're going to have to find out, they were also eavesdropping in her bedroom, and they were eavesdropping on attorney-client phone calls. So they were not allowed to do that. So the question is, did they really do it, which we don't know yet, number one. And number two, did they have any approval from a court? Because after all, they did get a lot of approval from the court. And her father says everything he did, he had approval for. So we'll see if he had approval. I doubt a California judge would sign off on eavesdropping in her bedroom or eavesdropping on attorney-client calls. But that's what he says, and we'll see if he can prove it. But the attorney is going to go after the invasion of privacy.
Lots to continue to watch for here, Cynthia. We always appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us. Let's now get a check on your Morning News Now weather.
Bill Cairns, how are we looking this morning?
We're looking fantastic in so many areas. Good morning, guys. No problems on the East Coast, really, or the West Coast. We're still in the middle of the country. That's where you need the umbrella today. If you're heading out in areas, especially heading from Sioux Falls all the way down to Omaha, a lot of heavy rain and even some thunderstorms this morning just north of Des Moines near Ames. And Wichita, Kansas has to deal with some storms. And this is honestly where most of the stormy weather is going to be over the next couple of days. So later on this afternoon towards this evening, this is paused at 8 p.m. driving in between Oklahoma City down to Wichita Falls. A lot of heavy rain. San Angelo, too. Dallas, it looks like some of that will arrive not till about probably 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. tonight. And then tomorrow, more showers and storms in that same area. So we're going to get some localized heavy downpours. We could get some isolated flooding. The areas there in the maroonish color, that's possibility of up to 2 inches of rain. So not going to cause many problems, but just going to keep things a little soggy. Your fall grass will like it. That's one positive twist on it. In the Northeast, temperatures only in the 60s today, kind of a coolish feel this morning. The Northwest, kind of cool with some showers in Seattle. And that's about it for the complaint department. Beautiful weather in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Denver, Salt Lake City's looking good. The Southeast, not bad either. DC's pretty good all the way down through the Carolinas. Still pretty warm and humid in Florida. You got to wait, though, just a little bit longer for your fall to begin. So weekend forecast coming up next hour. And I think once again, it's going to be one so many of you are going to love.
I got to tell you, it's really feeling like fall this morning up here in the Northeast, and I'm loving it.
Yeah,
I'm already getting on Amazon and ordering my Halloween decorations, so I'm ready.
No, that's kind of fun. All right, it's October tomorrow, right? All right,
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.